The screech of tires against asphalt cut through the morning air as two police cruisers skidded to a halt in front of the hospital's main entrance. Marcus Winters, a 42-year-old veteran with a prosthetic leg, barely had time to process what was happening before three officers surrounded his pickup truck. His weathered face, marked by the lines of someone who had seen too much, registered confusion as the lead officer rapped sharply on his window. "Sir, step out of the vehicle immediately," the officer commanded, his hand hovering near his holster. Marcus's voice remained steady despite his racing heart. "Officer, I have a prosthetic leg. I need a moment to—" "I said now." The officer yanked the door open. Two other officers moved in, their faces set in grim determination. A small crowd of hospital visitors began to gather, smartphones appearing like fireflies at dusk. 20 feet away, a blonde woman in expensive athleisure wear stood with arms crossed, a satisfied expression hardening her features. "I need to get my crutches," Marcus explained, reaching toward the passenger seat. Mistaking the movement, the lead officer grabbed Marcus's arm. "Hands where I can see them." What happened next unfolded in a chaotic blur. The officers pulled Marcus from his vehicle, his protests lost in their shouted commands. His wheelchair, carefully folded in the back seat, tumbled to the ground as they dragged him away from his truck. The sound of metal scraping concrete echoed across the parking lot. Marcus's prosthetic leg twisted awkwardly, sending shooting pain through his residual limb. His body hit the pavement hard. "You're hurting me!" Marcus shouted, his voice cracking as the officers pinned him face down. "I'm a disabled veteran, check my ID." But his pleas were drowned by the metallic click of handcuffs tightening around his wrists. Just 3 hours earlier, Marcus had woken to the familiar phantom pain in his left leg, the one he'd lost after an IED explosion in Afghanistan 7 years ago. The pain was an unwelcome companion that had grown more insistent over the past weeks. His weekly physical therapy sessions at Memorial Hospital were the only thing that seemed to help. His therapist, Dr. Sophia Chen, had developed a regimen that combined traditional methods with newer techniques that showed promising results for veterans like him. Marcus lived alone in a modest single-story house he'd purchased with his military benefits. The hallways were wider than standard to accommodate his wheelchair on days when his prosthetic became too painful to wear. His teenage daughter, Lily, visited on weekends, the only bright spots in his otherwise solitary life. Since the divorce 3 years ago, he'd struggled to find purpose beyond his part-time work as an online computer systems analyst, a job that allowed him to work from home when mobility became an issue. That morning, as he prepared for his 10 a.m. appointment, he'd called Lily. "Hey, Dad!" Her cheerful voice had immediately lightened his mood. "Still coming to my recital Saturday." "Wouldn't miss it for the world, kiddo," Marcus had replied, smiling despite the pain as he maneuvered around his kitchen. "Front row, as promised." "Mom says you should come for dinner after—" Marcus had hesitated. Things with his ex-wife, Diane, were cordial, but strained. "We'll see. Let me focus on being your biggest fan first." After hanging up, he'd checked his backpack extra sock for his residual limb, pain medication, water bottle, and the folder containing his medical history that Dr. Chen had requested. He'd made himself a quick breakfast, swallowed his morning medications, and headed out to his specially modified pickup truck. The drive to Memorial Hospital had been uneventful. The autumn morning was crisp, with leaves beginning to turn brilliant shades of red and gold. Marcus had found a spot in the handicap section near the main entrance, hung his permanent disability placard on the rearview mirror, and was preparing to exit his vehicle when he noticed a woman watching him from a nearby luxury SUV. He thought nothing of it at the time.
Bipper.
Karen Whitfield considered herself a pillar of the community. As the president of the Oak Ridge Homeowners Association and wife of a prominent local businessman, she'd made it her personal mission to enforce rules and proper behavior wherever she went. At 45, she maintained her appearance with religious devotion, weekly salon appointments, monthly Botox, and daily tennis at the country club when weather permitted. Her social media accounts showcased a perfect life, exotic vacations, charity galas, and her immaculate home. That morning, she had an appointment with her dermatologist at Memorial Hospital's adjoining medical plaza. Running late after an argument with her housekeeper, Karen had been furious to find no open spots near the entrance. When she saw Marcus pull into a handicapped space and exit his vehicle without any visible difficulty, righteous indignation flooded her system. "Unbelievable," she muttered, watching through her windshield as Marcus retrieved a backpack from the passenger seat. Another faker taking advantage. Karen had read an article just last week about people abusing handicap placards. The piece had mentioned a hotline to report suspected fraud. Without hesitation, she pulled out her phone and dialed 911. "Emergency services. What's your emergency?" the dispatcher answered. "Yes. Hello," Karen replied, her voice charged with purpose. "I'm at Memorial Hospital, and I need to report someone fraudulently using a handicap parking permit. He just parked and walked away without any assistance or visible disability. This is stealing from people who actually need these spaces." "Ma'am, is anyone in immediate danger?" "Well, no, but..." "This isn't an emergency situation. I can transfer you to the non-emergency line." Karen's nostrils flared. "Listen, this is fraud happening right in front of me. If police don't come immediately, he'll be gone. I pay my taxes for proper enforcement of the law." The dispatcher sighed audibly before asking for details. Karen provided a description of Marcus and his vehicle, emphasizing that he looked perfectly healthy and walked normally, deliberately omitting that she hadn't seen his entire journey from car to building entrance. "Officers will be dispatched when available," the dispatcher finally said. "Please don't confront the individual yourself." But Karen had already ended the call and was marching toward the hospital entrance, determined to document the fraud herself. She caught sight of Marcus in the lobby, sitting on a bench while checking his phone. Her phone camera was ready. "Excuse me," Karen said, approaching with confidence that came from years of getting her way. "That's your truck in the handicapped spot, isn't it?" Marcus looked up, momentarily confused. "Yes." "Do you realize those spots are reserved for actually disabled people?" Her emphasis on "actually" dripped with accusation. Marcus's expression shifted from confusion to weary recognition. This wasn't the first time he'd faced this particular brand of ignorance. "I am disabled, ma'am. I have a proper placard." "You look fine to me," Karen snapped, her phone still recording. "I saw you walk in. No cane, no wheelchair." "Not all disabilities are visible," Marcus replied, keeping his voice level despite the familiar anger building inside. He'd promised his therapist he wouldn't let these encounters affect him so deeply. "I have a prosthetic leg and chronic pain from military service." Karen scoffed. "That's what all you fakers say. Show me then." The request hit Marcus like a physical blow. "Excuse me. If you have a prosthetic leg, prove it. Right now." Karen's voice had risen, drawing attention from nearby patients and staff. A hospital security guard approached. Is there a problem here? Yes, Karen answered before Marcus could speak. This man is fraudulently using a handicap placard. I've already called the police. The guard turned to Marcus, recognition dawning on his face. Mr. Winters, right here for Dr. Chen. Marcus nodded, relieved. Yes, I have an appointment at 10. I know Mr. Winters, the guard said to Karen. He's a regular patient here. Well, he's deceiving you too, then, Karen insisted. He walked in here perfectly normally. The guard's radio crackled. Johnson, we have officers arriving at the main entrance regarding a handicap permit violation. You actually called the police? Marcus asked incredulously, disbelief washing over him. For what? Using the parking space I'm legally entitled to use. We'll let them decide what you're entitled to, Karen replied, a smug smile playing at her lips. She turned to the security guard. I'll wait with the officers outside. They'll want my statement. As Karen walked away, Marcus rubbed his temples, feeling a stress headache forming. The guard gave him an apologetic look. Want me to explain to the officers? He offered. Thanks, but I've got my ID and documentation, Marcus replied, resignation in his voice. This isn't my first rodeo with people like her. Little did he know that this encounter would be drastically different from any he'd experienced before. When the police officers entered the hospital lobby minutes later, Marcus was still waiting for his appointment. Karen trailed behind them, pointing directly at Marcus. That's him. The lead officer, whose nameplate read Brennan, approached with two others flanking him. Sir, we've received a complaint about handicap parking permit fraud. Marcus nodded calmly. I understand. I'm a disabled veteran with proper documentation. He reached for his wallet. My ID has a disabled veteran designation, and I have my registration showing. Sir, step away from the backpack, Officer Brennan ordered sharply. Keep your hands where we can see them. The sudden shift in tone startled Marcus. I'm just getting my ID. Stand up slowly and put your hands on your head, Brennan commanded. The security guard stepped forward. Officers, there's been a misunderstanding. Mr. Winters is a regular patient here. Stay out of this, one of the other officers warned. This is police business. Marcus slowly stood, wincing as he put weight on his prosthetic. Officers, I'm a veteran with a service-connected disability. I have a permanent handicap placard issued by the DMV. This woman is harassing me. Karen's voice rose above the tension. He was walking completely normally. I watched him. Sir, we need to verify your permit and identification outside at your vehicle, Brennan stated. His tone suggested this wasn't a request. I have an appointment in 10 minutes. Can we do this afterward? Marcus asked. No, sir. We need to address this now. Marcus sighed deeply. Fine. Let me get my crutches from my truck. My prosthetic is bothering me today. We'll accompany you, Brennan replied. The walk back to his truck was humiliating. Hospital visitors stared as Marcus limped alongside 3 police officers with Karen following at a distance, her phone still recording. By the time they reached his vehicle, his residual limb was throbbing from the unexpected exertion. Let me see your permit and license, Brennan demanded. Marcus reached into the truck for his wallet, moving slowly to avoid any misinterpretation of his actions. He handed over his driver's license and the permit registration card he kept in his glove compartment. Brennan examined them, then spoke into his radio. "Dispatch, I need a verification on a handicap placard. Number HD 435721. Karen stepped closer. "Ask him to prove he needs it. Anyone can get those permits if they know the right doctor." Marcus felt his temper rising. "Ma'am, I lost my leg serving this country. I don't need to prove anything to you." "Sir, calm down," the second officer warned. "I am calm," Marcus replied, his voice tight. "But I shouldn't have to defend my disability to random strangers or have police called on me for legally parking my vehicle." The radio crackled. "That placard shows registered to Marcus Winters for permanent disability, valid through 2027. "See?" Marcus said, relief evident in his voice. "Everything is in order. Can I go to my appointment now?" Karen wasn't satisfied. "He's walking fine. Make him show his supposed prosthetic." Officer Brennan hesitated, looking between Marcus and Karen. "Sir, can you verify your disability claim?" The request sent a shock of disbelief through Marcus. "You want me to what? Pull up my pant leg in the middle of a parking lot to satisfy a stranger's curiosity?" "It would resolve this situation quickly," Brennan suggested. "No, that's degrading and unnecessary," Marcus replied firmly. "My paperwork is in order. You've verified my permit is valid. There's no law requiring me to display my disability." Something in Brennan's expression hardened. "Sir, your hostility is concerning." Hostility. Marcus couldn't hide his incredulity. "I'm defending my basic dignity." "He's being evasive," Karen interjected. "That's suspicious behavior." "Ma'am, please step back," the third officer finally said. What happened next would later be captured in headlines across the country. Officer Brennan reached for the handicap placard hanging from Marcus's rearview mirror. "I'm confiscating this pending further investigation." Marcus instinctively grabbed for the placard. "You can't take that. It's legally issued to me." The movement was all the justification Brennan needed. "Sir, you're interfering with police business. Step out of the vehicle now." And that's when the situation spiraled completely out of control, culminating in Marcus being forcibly removed from his vehicle, his wheelchair clattering to the ground, and the veteran finding himself face down on the pavement in handcuffs. Pre-C. Dr. Sophia Chen was reviewing Marcus's file when the commotion reached her office. Her assistant burst through the door without knocking. "Dr. Chen, they're arresting Marcus Winters in the parking lot." Sophia didn't hesitate. She grabbed her medical tablet and rushed toward the entrance, her white coat billowing behind her. By the time she reached the scene, a crowd had gathered. Through the bodies, she could see Marcus on the ground, officers standing over him. "I'm his doctor," she shouted, pushing through. "Let me through immediately." The officers looked up as she approached, their expressions a mix of wariness and confusion. "Ma'am, this is a police matter," Brennan stated firmly. Sophia's eyes flashed. "This is my patient, and you have him face down on concrete with a prosthetic limb that could be damaged. As his physician, I'm telling you, he needs to be allowed to sit up immediately." Marcus's voice was strained. "Dr. Chen, they think I'm faking my disability." Sophia's normally calm demeanor cracked. "What? That's absurd." She held up her hospital badge and medical tablet. "I'm Dr. Sophia Chen, head of physical rehabilitation at this hospital. Marcus Winters is my patient and a disabled veteran who lost his leg in Afghanistan. I have his complete medical history, right here. Karen stepped forward. Doctor or not, I saw him walking just fine. There are people with real disabilities who need these spaces. Sophia fixed Karen with an icy stare. And you are? Karen Whitfield. I reported the fraud. Well, Ms. Whitfield, not all disabilities manifest the same way, and many aren't visible to untrained observers. Sophia turned back to the officers. Release my patient now, or I'll be on the phone with the hospital's legal team, the VA, and every news outlet in the city within 5 minutes. The authority in her voice gave Brennan pause. After a moment, he nodded to the other officers. Uncuff him. As Marcus was helped to a sitting position, his face contorted in pain, Sophia immediately knelt beside him, her trained eyes assessing his condition. My prosthetic is damaged, Marcus said through gritted teeth. And my shoulder. Sophia looked up at the officers. He needs medical attention. I'm taking him inside now. She gestured to nearby hospital staff who had gathered. Bring a wheelchair immediately. Officer Brennan seemed to realize the situation was slipping from his control. We still need to complete our investigation. Your investigation, Sophia scoffed. Of what a man, using his legally obtained handicap placard, you can complete your paperwork inside after my patient receives medical attention. A hospital security supervisor had arrived and was already speaking quietly into his radio. Nearby, several bystanders had their phones out, recording the entire incident. Karen's indignation hadn't diminished. This is ridiculous. He's clearly playing it up now that he's been caught. A young man in scrubs who had been watching stepped forward. I've got it all on video. Dr. Chen, from the moment they pulled him from the truck. Sophia nodded gratefully. Please send that to hospital security. She turned to Karen. And you, Ms. Whitfield, should expect to hear from our legal department. Harassing patients on hospital property is taken very seriously here. As hospital staff helped Marcus into a wheelchair, Sophia noticed a local news van pulling into the parking lot. Someone had already alerted the media. Marcus, she said quietly as they moved toward the entrance. This is going to get complicated. Are you up for it? His eyes, clouded with pain but burning with determination, met hers. I don't want anyone else going through this. Whatever it takes. By evening, the video had gone viral. Footage showing 3 police officers dragging a disabled veteran from his vehicle, his prosthetic leg clearly visible as he was forced to the ground, sparked outrage across social media platforms. Local news stations led with the story, and national outlets quickly picked it up. Disabled veteran forcibly arrested for using handicap parking, screamed the headlines. The hospital's statement confirming Marcus's patient status and disability only fueled the growing firestorm. In the hospital room where he was being treated for a dislocated shoulder and damage to his prosthetic, Marcus watched the coverage with mixed emotions. His ex-wife Diane had arrived with their daughter Lily, whose tear-streaked face broke his heart. Dad, why would they do that to you? She asked, her voice small and confused. Marcus squeezed her hand. Sometimes people make assumptions. Kiddo, they see what they expect to see. Diane's expression was a mix of fury and concern. The VA lawyer called. They're sending someone first thing tomorrow. Marcus nodded, wincing at the movement. This shouldn't have happened. Not to me. Not to anyone. Dr. Chen entered with a tablet in hand. How's the pain level? Manageable, Marcus replied, though his grimace suggested otherwise. "I've ordered a temporary replacement prosthetic," Sophia said. "Your custom one will need significant repairs." She paused, her professional demeanor softening. "Marcus, there's something else you should know. We've received dozens of calls from other disabled veterans and community members. They're organizing some kind of demonstration for tomorrow." "Demonstration?" "In support of you. Against what happened." Sophia handed him the tablet. On the screen was a hastily created social media event page titled, "Stand with Marcus Disability, Rights Now." Nearly 2,000 people had already indicated they would attend. "This is—" Marcus trailed off, overwhelmed. A knock at the door interrupted them. A tall, distinguished black man in his 60s entered. "Marcus Winters, Colonel James Washington, retired. Mind if I come in?" Marcus straightened reflexively. "Colonel, of course, sir." Washington approached the bed, his gait slightly uneven from his own prosthetic leg. "At ease, son. I'm not here as your superior." He glanced at the news playing silently on the television. "I'm here as the president of the local Veterans Alliance. What happened to you today? It's unacceptable." Marcus nodded, emotion tightening his throat. "We're mobilizing," Washington continued. "Not just vets, but disability advocacy groups, civil rights organizations, concerned citizens. This isn't just about one incident. It's about dignity and respect for all people with disabilities." "I never wanted to become a cause," Marcus said quietly. Washington's expression was solemn. "Sometimes the cause finds you, son." As the colonel outlined the plans for the next day, Marcus felt something shift inside him. The humiliation and pain began to transform into purpose. If his experience could prevent others from facing similar treatment, perhaps some good could come from it after all. What none of them realized was that Karen Whitfield was dealing with her own fallout. Her identity had been quickly discovered, and her social media accounts were flooded with outrage. The video clearly showed her involvement, her insistence that Marcus prove his disability. Her husband's business was receiving negative reviews by the hundreds. Their phone wouldn't stop ringing. But Karen wasn't someone who admitted mistakes easily. Instead, she doubled down, posting a lengthy statement on social media, defending her actions as those of a concerned citizen fighting against handicap parking fraud. She claimed the video had been selectively edited and that she was the real victim of a social media mob. The statement only intensified the backlash. By the following morning, the situation had escalated beyond anyone's expectations. The hospital's expansive parking lot was filling with people carrying signs reading, "Disability rights are human rights," and "Respect, not inspection." Veterans in uniform stood alongside disability advocates in wheelchairs. News vans lined the street. Inside, Marcus was preparing to be discharged. The hospital's CEO had personally visited to apologize and assure him that all his medical expenses would be covered. The city's mayor had called, distancing herself from the police department's actions and promising a full investigation. Officer Brennan and his partners had been placed on administrative leave pending that investigation. The police chief had issued a statement announcing immediate review of protocols for handling disability-related complaints. As Marcus was helped into a wheelchair hospital policy for discharge, his phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. It was a link to a breaking news article. His heart sank as he read the headline, "Woman who reported disabled veteran has history of similar complaints." The article detailed how Karen Whitfield had called authorities on 3 other individuals with invisible disabilities in the past year alone. One was a young woman with multiple sclerosis. Another a man with chronic lung disease requiring supplemental oxygen, and a third was an elderly man with a heart condition. In each case, she had challenged their right to use handicapped facilities. This just keeps getting worse, Marcus murmured. Diane, who had stayed overnight in his room, looked over his shoulder. No, Marcus, it's getting better. She's being exposed. When Marcus was wheeled toward the hospital exit, he was unprepared for the crowd that awaited him. Hundreds of people erupted in applause and cheers. Colonel Washington stepped forward, offering a crisp salute that Marcus returned from his wheelchair. "Your chariot awaits, soldier," Washington said, gesturing to a van equipped with a wheelchair lift. Marcus spotted familiar faces in the crowd, other veterans from his support group, neighbors, even his daughter's school principal. The outpouring of support was overwhelming. A reporter pushed forward with a microphone. "Mr. Winters, do you have a statement about what happened yesterday?" Marcus hesitated, then nodded. Diane squeezed his shoulder encouragingly. "What happened to me is something too many people with disabilities face every day," he began, his voice steadying as he continued. "We're questioned, disbelieved, asked to prove our conditions to complete strangers. Yesterday, that everyday indignity escalated to physical harm and public humiliation. But this isn't just about me. It's about creating a world where people with disabilities aren't treated with suspicion for simply existing in public spaces." The crowd erupted in applause. Marcus raised a hand for silence. "I don't want vengeance. I want change. Better training for police. Greater awareness about invisible disabilities. And basic human respect for people facing challenges most can't imagine." His voice cracked slightly. "I lost my leg serving this country. I shouldn't have to prove my sacrifice to use a parking space." As cameras flashed and the crowd cheered again, Marcus noticed a disturbance at the edge of the gathering. Karen Whitfield, wearing large sunglasses and a scarf partially obscuring her face, was attempting to push through toward him. A security guard intercepted her. "Ma'am, you need to leave hospital property immediately," the guard stated firmly. "I have a right to tell my side," Karen insisted, her voice carrying across the suddenly hushed crowd. "He's making me out to be a monster." All eyes turned to Marcus. The moment stretched, tension crackling in the air. Finally, he spoke. "Ms. Whitfield, your actions speak for themselves," he said calmly. "The videos, your history of similar incidents, they tell a clear story. But I'm not your enemy. I hope someday you'll understand the harm caused when we judge others without knowing their struggles." Karen's face flushed red. "You have no idea who I am or what I've been through." The irony of her statement hung in the air. Marcus simply nodded. "Exactly. That's precisely my point." Karen opened her mouth to respond, but whatever she planned to say was lost as a police officer approached her. "Ms. Whitfield, I need to speak with you regarding a complaint filed by the hospital for harassment of a patient on their property." The crowd parted as Karen was escorted away, her protests fading into the distance. Colonel Washington turned to Marcus. "The City Council has called an emergency session for this afternoon. They're discussing new policies for handicap placard enforcement and sensitivity training for first responders. They've asked if you would attend." Marcus looked around at the supportive faces, at his daughter's proud expression, at the community that had rallied around him. His shoulder ached and his leg throbbed, but a new sense of purpose burned within him. "Yes," he said firmly. "I'll be there." The city council chambers were packed beyond capacity. People lined the walls and spilled into the hallway outside. Marcus, seated at a special table near the front with Colonel Washington and representatives from disability rights organizations, surveyed the crowd with amazement. Mayor Gloria Patterson called the session to order, her expression grave. "We're here today to address a deeply troubling incident that occurred at Memorial Hospital yesterday. But more broadly, we're here to examine how our city treats its disabled residents and what changes are needed." For the next hour, various officials spoke. The police chief offered a formal apology to Marcus and announced immediate changes to department training. The city attorney outlined new guidelines for handicap placard enforcement that emphasized respect and privacy. Several citizens with disabilities shared their own experiences of being questioned or harassed. When it was Marcus's turn to speak, he rose slowly, using a cane with his temporary prosthetic. The room fell silent. "Yesterday, I was humiliated and injured because one person decided I didn't look disabled enough," he began, his voice steady. "But this isn't about one bad encounter or one person's prejudice. It's about a society that too often treats disability with suspicion instead of accommodation." He gestured to the crowded room. "Look at the people here today, veterans, parents of disabled children, elderly citizens, people with chronic illnesses. We're not asking for special treatment. We're asking for the dignity of being believed." As Marcus continued his testimony, he noticed movement at the back of the room. Karen Whitfield had entered with a man in an expensive suit, her husband. Marcus presumed, or perhaps her lawyer. She looked markedly different from the confident woman who had confronted him at the hospital, smaller somehow, her perfect appearance slightly disheveled. Mayor Patterson noticed her as well. "Ms. Whitfield, the council has questions for you, if you're willing to speak." All eyes turned to Karen as she made her way forward. Her husband remained at the back, his expression unreadable. When she reached the microphone, Karen cleared her throat nervously. I've prepared a statement," she said, unfolding a paper with trembling hands. "Before you begin," the mayor interrupted, "I should inform you that the council has received documentation of your previous complaints against disabled individuals using accessible facilities. This appears to be a pattern of behavior." Karen's composure visibly crumbled. "You don't understand. My mother—" She stopped abruptly. "Your mother?" the mayor prompted. For a moment, it seemed Karen might leave. Instead, she took a deep breath. "My mother was disabled. Severely. For years. I drove her to appointments, helped her shop, watched her struggle to find accessible parking because spaces were taken by people who didn't seem disabled. She died last year, after a fall in a parking lot, when we had to park far from the entrance." A murmur ran through the crowd. Marcus studied Karen's face, seeing genuine pain beneath the defensive anger. "I'm sorry about your mother," he said quietly, but his microphone carried his words to everyone. "Truly. But your pain doesn't justify causing pain to others." Karen met his eyes for the first time. "I know that now." She turned back to the council. "What I did was wrong. I am angry about what happened to my mother. But I took that anger out on the wrong people. Mr. Winters didn't deserve what happened to him. None of them did." The admission stunned the room into silence. "Thank you for your honesty, Ms. Whitfield," the mayor finally said. "However, acknowledgement doesn't erase consequences. The council will be implementing a significant fine system for false reports regarding disability accommodations. Additionally, Mr. Winters and the other individuals affected by your actions retain their right to pursue civil claims." Karen nodded stiffly and returned to her seat. The rest of the session focused on concrete actions, new signage for handicap spaces, explaining invisible disabilities, community education programs, enhanced training for police and first responders, and a citizen advisory committee on accessibility issues with Marcus invited to serve as its first chairperson. By the time the session concluded 3 hours later, the city had committed to meaningful change. As people began to file out, Marcus found himself face to face with Karen in the crowded aisle. The moment was awkward, charged with unresolved tension. Karen spoke first. "I can't undo what happened," she said softly, "but I am sorry." Marcus studied her, seeing not the entitled woman from the hospital parking lot, but someone broken by grief and misplaced anger. "Grief can make us do terrible things," he said finally. "I know something about that." "My lawyer says you'll probably sue." "Probably." Marcus agreed. "Actions have consequences. But I'd be willing to discuss alternatives if you're serious about making amends." Hope flickered across Karen's face. "Like what?" "Community service with disability organizations. Speaking publicly about what happened and why it was wrong. Using your considerable social influence to advocate for better understanding of invisible disabilities." Karen considered this. "I could do that." "Think about it," Marcus said. "My lawyer will be in touch with yours." As Karen walked away, Colonel Washington approached. "That was generous of you." Marcus shrugged. "Punishment without education just creates more resentment. If she's willing to learn and help others learn, that's worth more than any settlement check." Washington nodded approvingly. The VA hospital director called. "They want you to lead a new patient advocacy program. Seems you've found a new mission. Soldier." Marcus looked around at the chamber, where so much positive change had just been set in motion. For the first time since his injury in Afghanistan, he felt a sense of purpose that extended beyond his own recovery. "Looks like I have," he agreed. 6 months later, Marcus stood at a podium in the newly renovated Memorial Hospital parking area. Behind him, freshly installed signs featured clear explanations about invisible disabilities and the varied needs of placard holders. The hospital had implemented a new security protocol that emphasized respectful verification when necessary. The police department had completely overhauled its training on disability interactions. Officer Brennan, after a suspension and sensitivity training, had personally apologized to Marcus and now helped lead workshops for other officers on appropriate responses to disability-related calls. As for Karen Whitfield, she had avoided a civil trial by agreeing to Marcus's terms: 500 hours of community service with disability organizations, public speaking about her experience and what she'd learned, and financial support for a new community education program about invisible disabilities. The ceremony today was to unveil this new program and the accompanying public awareness campaign. To Marcus's surprise, Karen had become one of its most effective advocates, her social connections opening doors to funding and support that might otherwise have remained closed. Lily stood in the front row, beaming with pride as her father addressed the gathered crowd. Beside her was Diane, who had grown closer to Marcus through the ordeal of the past months. They weren't reconciling romantically, but they had found a new respect and friendship that benefited them all. Today marks not an ending, but a beginning. Marcus concluded his speech. "What happened here 6 months ago was painful, but from that pain has come progress. Our community has demonstrated that we can learn, grow, and become more compassionate toward one another. He gestured to Karen, seated nearby. Ms. Whitfield and I began as adversaries. Today, we work together toward a common goal, a community where no one has to prove their disability or defend their right to accommodation. Karen nodded, her expression solemn but resolved. The signs we unveil today are more than just explanations of the law. Marcus continued. They're a statement of our values as a community. They say, we believe you. We respect you. We accommodate you without question or judgment. As the covers were removed from the new signage, applause rippled through the crowd. The bright blue signs featured clear graphics, and the words, "Not all disabilities are visible," prominently displayed. After the ceremony, as people mingled and media conducted interviews, Marcus found a quiet moment with Lily. "You know what, Dad," she said, linking her arm through his. "I used to be embarrassed about your leg sometimes. Not because I was ashamed of you, but because I hated how people stared or asked questions." Marcus nodded, understanding completely. "But now," Lily continued, "I'm just really, really proud. You took something awful and turned it into something amazing." Marcus hugged his daughter close, his heart full. From nearby came the sound of Karen explaining invisible disabilities to a reporter, her once haughty voice now tempered with humility and purpose. People were listening. Things were changing. Not just signs and policies, but attitudes and understanding. It wasn't perfect, change never is, but it was progress. Real, meaningful progress born from pain and confrontation. As Marcus looked out over the hospital parking lot, where his ordeal had begun, he no longer saw the scene of his humiliation. Instead, he saw the birthplace of a movement, a community, transformed by the simple, yet revolutionary idea that respect and belief should be the default response to disability, visible or not. His prosthetic leg would always mark him as different. But in this moment, surrounded by a community forever changed by his experience, Marcus Winters felt something he hadn't felt in a very long time. Wholly, completely accepted.